Welcome back to another episode of Digging Deep. It is so lovely to have you. I'm starting us off with another quote today because I've just been on a kick with quotes, and it perfectly ties into what we're talking about in today's episode. It matters not what you've done, but what you do with what you've done for others. Now, if you feel like this quote is familiar and you've heard it before, yes, it was from Noah Centineo, and the internet completely warped the meaning of it and made him feel stupid for saying it. But I personally have always understood the deeper meaning of this, and that is that your purpose is not solely an individualistic pursuit, but rather how you can use something that you're naturally gifted at, something that you're passionate about in service of others, something that you can take your personal skills and make that a way to make the world a better place. And today we're talking all about purpose. Coincidentally, I've mentioned this many times, but that is my middle name, and I feel like this podcast is a big way that I've been able to step into and walk in my purpose, which is very, very gratifying, and I'm so grateful every time I get to come on here and talk. And another note, we just had the 2-year anniversary of Digging Deep, so I just want to say a really, really, really big thank you for taking the time out of your day to come listen to this, because I know that you could be spending your time doing anything on the internet or off the internet, but the fact that you're here is really special to me. And I always say this, but yes, 2 years in, but this is literally only the beginning, and I have so many things I want to do with this one day, so all a matter of time, and I'm just so happy that you're here today. So without further ado, it is time to dig deep. Purpose. That big, daunting question of what the hell are we doing here? What's the point? Especially as someone who is Gen Z and awakening to not only just myself, but collectively, my peers, we're awakening to kind of this fallacy and false sense of the American dream that we've been sold our whole lives. We're stepping into the workforce, getting 9-to-5s, realizing that that lifestyle is a one-way ticket to burnout, but we don't really know how to get out of it and how to break free from that blueprint. When the dating scene is terrible, there's not really that many eligible, suitable, compatible people to actually couple up with and build a life with. A lot of women specifically are choosing to opt out of that dating scene and just choose to be single now. The idea of having kids and settling down and being a stay-at-home mom is not as enticing and appealing to as many people as it used to be, because people have different aspirations, and women are actually able to follow those aspirations and be taken slightly more seriously in those pursuits. Not fully, there's still so much work to be done in that area, obviously, but just this idea that the mask is being taken off, that the veil is being removed, and we're seeing the world, society, and the capitalistic framework for what it really is, and that is a lie. The American dream is just that. It is a dream. It is not something that we have actually been able to fulfill in a sustainable way without taking our own personal agency and designing our own version of that. And with thinking of the dream that we've been sold comes the question of, what are we doing here? What is the point of all of this? I refuse to believe that God, universe, source, whoever created us and all of this made our suffering in vain, made us go through all of these things, these atrocities in society for no reason. Like, that just does not seem like a good use of putting us here. I've seen so many think pieces, articles, and even just personal conversations I've had with my peers of just this overwhelming feeling of hopelessness and impending doom and existential dread of the future. How do we plan for a future that may not exist, or a version of a future that we have no idea what it'll look like? Because the framework of what we've been sold is actively being broken down, and we don't resonate with the lifestyle, the blueprint of what once stood, but we're still in that crafting process of building a better future for everybody. So it's that weird gray area of, how do I feel like my life has meaning when there are genocides happening, wars around the world, where still people do not have rights, and even the rights that they do have are not being honored and respected or lawfully followed? How do I still hold on to hope even when the world feels like it's falling apart? How do I wake up in the morning and go to my 9-to-5 and not have a panic attack when there are so many bigger things at play? How do I play a part in changing the world without sacrificing my mental well-being and my physical health? Do I even want to play a part in changing the world? Do I even feel capable? All of these things have been swirling around in my brain for a long time, and I know that being in your 20s is for kind of pinballing these ideas and slowly trying to piece the meaning of life together, I guess you could say. And I don't think anybody will ever have it fully figured out, so I just want to preface that this is not me saying, this is how you find meaning in life, but this is just what has worked for me and what I've learned and what I'm interested in sharing. So I am not the expert at this, but I am really passionate about purpose because I'm very fortunate to be someone who has always been purpose-driven. I think back to being a kid, something that every adult asks a kid is, what do you want to be when you grow up? One of the most common questions before a kid is even asked about their interests is what they want to be when they grow up. And an undertone of that is the title. Directly teaching kids from such a young and impressionable age that their worth is to be tied to whatever role they fulfill, whatever title in society they have. Whether that's be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a surgeon, if you want to be an athlete, if you want to be a teacher, they all come with their own different connotations, and the adult's reactions to whatever the kid answers directly affects how the kid feels about that choice. And instead of interrogating maybe what the kid is naturally gifted at or what they enjoy doing just for the sake of doing it, instead we live in a culture that ties one's worth, one's meaning of existence to whatever monetary thing they can give out. Whatever role they can fulfill for the machine of capitalism is how we view people's worth. How productive you are, how much you make a year, what your title at work is, what lifestyle you have all been ways for people to pigeonhole you into this narrow-minded definition of what purpose is, for what your reason for being alive is. Let me just pause you right there. I'm staring right now out into a beautifully open window with trees, and I saw a hummingbird, there's flowers, families laughing, children running, smiles, joy. And you mean to tell me that I'm supposed to fall into believing that the meaning of life was to slave away your life in an office cubicle, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, for 40 plus years at the same job every single day? I reject that. Things like Enneagrams, 16 personalities, and even horoscopes are all things we cling onto in hopes of finding our life's purpose. So that brings us to the question, what is purpose? By definition, purpose is the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. I love breaking down the meaning of words because I think it helps us put it into perspective of the way in which we're using that and maybe how we're manipulating the definition to be more self-serving to what we want it to be. Synonyms of purpose are motivation, cause, impetus, intention, and hope. Purpose is described as both the input and the output, both the cause and effect, the question and the answer. Purpose can be this daunting concept to try to think of a definition of in your own terms, especially if you're someone that doesn't feel naturally inclined to having a bigger meaning. I'm a firm believer that we are all here for a reason, whether that is in doing something grand and life-changing, or if that's just showing up in your day-to-day life, being present and spreading love and moving from a place of love, which is meaningful in itself. I'm not knocking that as not purposeful or impactful. But I think when we view purpose as this grand thing, it has to be this huge life-altering thing, we can feel so incapable of making any real change in our lives or even connecting us to our purpose. There's this idea that comes up when talking about purpose. Is purpose something we are naturally born with or something we awaken to? Is purpose something that we have to go out and seek and find, or is it just something that through our life's experiences we naturally connect to and that purpose reveals itself? We're sold this narrow-minded, binary idea of measuring purpose and success by monetary value, by productivity, by job titles, and by what we can get, by what we can acquire. But purpose is so much more than that. Purpose is about what you're able to give to this world. What is your contribution to the bigger population? How can you inspire others to lead their life with love and give them a sense of hope and an excitement for being alive, even when things are hard, especially when things are hard. Growing up, I always thought that I was going to be a nurse. I love to tell this story like a broken record, but I think it's very valid for today's episode. And mind you, I think it's really cool because looking back at old episodes, there are so many themes and just things that I've moved through in the last 2 years that have helped me further trickle down this path of my purpose. And it's like building one after the other. It's like a domino effect of like, okay, I made an episode about this. I feel like I kind of got to know myself better and hopefully helped you guys get to know yourselves better. And the next episode, I'm just furthering that practice of deepening my understanding of what I'm doing here in the world. But I always circle back to these concepts. Life is a spiral, right? We're always spiraling up and just learning the same things over and over again, which is a beautiful thing to happen. And what was I trying to say? So I've definitely mentioned this story before, but it is a very important one to my journey. So I always thought that I was going to grow up and be a nurse. This dates so far back that there is a picture that my aunt drew of me titled Dr. Diggs, and it's from probably when I was age 6. And so since then on, that was kind of the path. That was what I thought I was good at. Not so much helping people, but being a nurse, or so I thought. And so I spent my whole life building up this idea of this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to college, get this degree. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in this field as a nurse because that is what I was put on here to do. And then I went to college and I failed my first semester. And I was forced to face head on what is my purpose outside of this role. Am I good at anything else other than quote unquote being a nurse? What do I like? What am I naturally drawn to? What skills do I offer this world just by being who I am without forcing myself into this specific career path or specific career title? And so I got a new job working at a gym. I worked in the childcare section, and I absolutely fell in love with the seemingly meaningless and small interactions I was able to have with the kids and their families every single day. And I knew that I always wanted to work with kids, even when I was doing nursing. Like I wanted to work either in pediatrics, labor and delivery, mother and baby, NICU. I knew I wanted to be with young people. That was just something that always interested me. And I feel like I connect with children very easily. But this job, who would have thought, not I, that working at a gym would actually change my whole perception of my purpose. I took a gap year off of college, which was one thing I said I would never do. I changed my major from nursing to education. I full-fledged just trusted in the unfolding of my purpose. Even though it was this idea of me being a nurse that I had built my entire life and identity around, I knew that the universe was calling me in a different direction and I just had to follow it. And I'm not saying that to negate or play down any of the anxieties or feelings of inadequacies and shame that came up, because they were very much there. But I'm so grateful that I gave myself space to feel that pain and allow it to transform me and connect me closer to my purpose. And I say that to say that your purpose is not just the title or the job that you get. Whatever job you get is a way for you to express your purpose, but your purpose is the physical trait that you have. For example, me being a teacher or previously wanted to be a nurse, I wanted to do that because I wanted to help people. Helping people, in my opinion, for my personal situation, what I feel is my true calling in life is my purpose. I truly think that I was put on this earth to help and heal as many people that I possibly can. But through teaching and nursing in the past, those are just simply vessels for my purpose to shine through. And that doesn't mean that I'm never going to change the title one day. I think the way that society views purpose currently is such a restrictive way, and it doesn't leave any room for people to change their mind or fluctuations, or for you to just grow as a person and realize that, hey, maybe this job that I was told was my purpose my whole life no longer serves the life that I want to live, but I still have gifts and skills that I want to use elsewhere. Whatever job title that you hold is not your purpose alone. It is the traits and the way in which your personality and uniqueness can shine through from being in that role. And that is allowed to change. It's going to change. One of the worst things that you can do for yourself and for the community is bog yourself down into this box of staying in your purpose, but it's really just a job that doesn't let you live your purpose in any way. We're going to talk about my favorite movie, Soul. This movie changed my life the first time I watched it, and it collectively, I think, had a really good impact. I will always say that this movie and Inside Out 2 are not children's movies. They were made for adults going through existential crises, and they are very much an important part in me redefining what purpose means. So in this movie, there's a main character, Joe, who is on this journey of kind of uncovering what his purpose is. Joe is a musician, and he says repeatedly throughout the movie that music is his reason for being alive. He is so deeply passionate about music and connected to it, and he was convinced that the reason why he was brought to Earth was to be a musician. He kind of follows the struggling artist archetype of working his whole life to be a musician but not really finding success in that field, and so he becomes a school teacher. I believe it's at a high school, teaching music. So he's still practicing it, but not in the performance aspect that he specifically wanted for himself. And from a bad accident, he's then thwarted into kind of this in-between of life and death, and he has to become a mentor and help another person find their purpose or their spark. So in this, I forget what they call it, while Joe is mentoring a character named 22, the narrative is pushed that one's purpose, they call it their spark in this movie, is this grand thing. We see these characters going through different activities to try to uncover their spark, and in order to come down to earth as a soul, you must find your spark. It's a little box that fills in, and they think that it fills in when you find the thing. They think it fills in when you find the what, the role, whether it's an artist, a singer, a teacher, a healer, a musician, an athlete. They think your spark is completely tied to whatever role you fit. But what actually ends up happening is that little box that allows you admission into earth, that gives you permission to be alive and experience things, fills in when you are ready to come alive. And that is a quote from the movie that will forever stick with me. And 22 is this cynical perspective. She has spent so much time in this limbo state of figuring out what her purpose is, having so many different mentors and not feeling like she resonates with anything. She says that she feels like she's just deeply flawed and maybe she doesn't have a purpose in life, and that's why she's never been able to come down to earth. But she has an experience where she's able to visit earth for the first time in Joe's body, and something that is so beautifully depicted through her eyes is her admiration for the little things. When she's living in Joe's life for one day only, her first time on earth, the thing that she thought was supposed to be her purpose, this grand, huge accomplishment, was really her just appreciating every little minute detail that we as humans usually will bypass and not really acknowledge as being beautiful because we're used to them. Whether that's collecting the wrapper from her first lollipop after getting a haircut, or saving a leaf as it falls down from the tree, saving the crust from pizza because it is the best thing she's ever tasted, because up in the space where she was at, she couldn't taste anything. Her appreciation for the little things is what made her feel alive, gave her that overwhelming sensation of, oh my gosh, my life has meaning because I am acknowledging the meaning that is already there. And that was what allowed her to come down to earth. That was her spark. The movie Soul gives the perfect reminder that purpose is found in the little things. We often think that purpose has to be this never-ending pursuit of this grand accomplishment that changes the world overnight. We've now adopted this idea of overnight success even. But purpose is in appreciating the good that is already there. I think it's really interesting too because in the movie there's also the concept of a lost soul. And when we normally think about that in our day-to-day lives, it's just people who have maybe resigned from life, whether it's from extreme circumstances or just a lack of purpose, right? But this says that a lost soul is someone who is disconnected, and this can happen when one either becomes obsessed with a goal or completely detached from their soul. So I think that's interesting to see the contrast of how something that we're commonly told to do, which is become completely obsessed and immersed in our goals and our passions and essentially like lose ourselves in that, leads us to also feeling like a lost soul, just as much as being completely resigned from life can. In the movie, I love the sentiment of life as improvisation. And Joe is a jazz musician, as I mentioned, and he says whenever he's like in the zone of just life and just feeling present and also feeling inspired and really utterly, unshakably alive, he says, I'm jazzing. And he'll tell that to 22 whenever she's in the zone, flowing in this magical state of creation, flow, and presence, is I'm jazzing. And I think it's a good reminder for all of us to keep in mind that we are just making this up as we go. No one knows what the real point of life is, but you give life meaning and you find the point by showing up, by trying, by leaning into joy when it comes up, and not saying that just because this thing is maybe small or seemingly insignificant, that it can't be my reason for being alive. Nothing is too small. One last thing from this movie that I want to mention that is really interesting, that they put this in there, I'm surprised it slipped past the writer's table, is someone in I can't think of the word of where they live right now, like the zone that they go to in between life and death. But wherever they go, someone says up there, don't worry, you can't crush a soul here. That's what life on earth is for. That's probably not a surprise to anybody, like you probably live that every single day, but it can feel so overwhelmingly impossible to remain hopeful and walking through life with a sense of purpose when there are so many things happening, so much negativity in the world, and so many things that we are being fed to care about. Our attention is constantly being pulled in every direction, and it's hard to tune in to what really matters. But it always circles back to admiring the little things, being present. If that means taking a moment to savor the last bite of your lunch and really just be thankful for the ability to have this time and to have this meal to nourish you, then do that. If that means staying in your car an extra 2 minutes before walking into your children at the end of the day to hear your favorite song just for one more time, then do that. If that means stopping and actually smelling the roses on a walk because they're just beautiful and they just make you feel happy, do that. No amount of joy is too small or insignificant to care about. With living in a world that is so focused on productivity, consumption, and selling ourselves in the name of our purpose, there comes a lot of uneasy feelings, at least I know for me personally, of how am I supposed to balance having this job that I was told I need to step into in order to live in the confines of capitalism, while also feeling like I was made for so much more. How do I balance a job that feels like it is draining me, but I need to pay the bills, while also balancing a dream? I've seen a lot of messages about this online as well, and again, just in conversation with people going through this same exact situation of everything feeling performative. Everything, even going to work, even doing a job that maybe you are actually passionate about, can feel like a performance in a world of capitalism. It can feel like you always have to be on, you always have to be at the top of your game, even if you genuinely can't be there that day. You have to perform. You have to perform. That's what capitalism tells us. Even being a teacher for me can feel like a performance some days. And that's not to say I don't deeply love it and I don't feel called to do the work that I do, but I'm human. Some days I have really, really, really terrible mental health days, and it's even hard for me to just get out of bed myself, but then I have to go and be this positive, unwaveringly positive person and inspiring figure for 15 kids, and I have to make sure that I meet all of their needs and that I give them a good experience. And that is a lot. I think that we can all, at the very least, we can all acknowledge that is a lot, and it can be exhausting. And I don't think saying that you're exhausted or that it is a lot to carry then equates to you not being purposeful or you not enjoying what you do. But it is really interesting to kind of see the culture redefine what is worth sacrificing ourselves for, or what is worth giving so much of our time and energy to. I heard Rick Rubin talk about this in a podcast with Jay Shetty, and this is an idea that I'm familiar with, but it's still something that I have a hard time like embodying and coming to terms with, of just viewing your job as just a job, and you don't need to be wildly passionate about it. Because the disconnect that I have there is that we spend so much of our lives at our job that is just a means to get us to our dream. But it's like the confines of capitalism force us to stay in that job in order to earn retirement benefits, in order to have health insurance for our future children and families. It gives us these incentives to stay while actively undermining our well-being and preventing us from leaving and actually following our dreams. That is why we're seeing an influx. Is that the right word? That's why we're seeing an influx of people, I want to say in more recent years, since this kind of cultural shift has been happening, of people leaving their 9-to-5s. They're waking up and realizing that this lifestyle is not one that sustains me or inspires me and makes me feel connected to my purpose. The sentiment of, I'm just going to start following my dreams because that seems easier in this society has been coming up. People up and leaving and completely just going after what they want now instead of what they feel like they've been sold they need, because the job market is so bad. Buying a house right now seems nearly impossible for someone in my generation. We just took on a whole bunch of debt, I'm pretty sure. I'm not going to get into politics, but all of these conditions are making us feel like living and just simply existing is such a hard task. With trying to balance a job and a dream, there is also this kind of hidden element of the illusion of having the same 24 hours. There's a Substack called You Don't Have the Same 24 Hours as Beyoncé by Jamila Bradley, and she beautifully summarizes this idea of we are not given the same opportunity to work towards our passions and really build a life that we want. Some people have a different starting field, and that is why equity is so much more important than equality, because we are not all given these same resources, opportunities to succeed. Some people genuinely have an advantage over others, and I think it's really important to understand that and see how it affects our ability to walk in our purpose. She says, folks aren't just asking for advice or resources, they're craving structural support. Essentially, they're buying back their time. And this is talking about how people are outsourcing help in different areas, and the real root of it is that they want their time back. Whether that's time to give to their passion project, time to spend with their kids, time to give to themselves. Time is constantly being taken from us. She describes the concept of network impoverishment, which I've never heard of, but it is the way systemic inequality leaves certain communities cut off from the generous solution-based support that wealthier folks treat as a given. Wealth comes with an entire ecosystem ready to intervene before real chaos hits. Wealthy people aren't just hardworking. They have entire systems dedicated to buying back their hours. This made me think of the quote that says, "You're not lazy, you're just burnt out." We were not designed to take on all of the responsibilities and the weight of navigating life under this system of capitalism by ourselves. That is why celebrities who have the money and resources to go and outsource certain things are deemed as the most successful. They just have the resources to do those things. For example, I think about this all the time, but athletes, if you think of LeBron James, that man is not planning his meals, planning his workouts, designing his home to have all of the features that he would need for recovery. He is not making appointments for himself. He simply hires people and delegates these tasks, and his only job is showing up. Versus the average human being who does not have the millions of dollars and access to top-notch nutritionists and coaches that he does, they are having to play all of those roles. A normal person on their average day is playing the role of the chef, playing the role of the therapist in their relationships, playing the role of a teacher if they have children, playing the role of the workout coach, the fitness instructor. All of these things are added stress, pressure, anxiety in a world that already is overwhelming us with all of those feelings. They're running on a delegation machine that spares them from the usual friction of daily life, Meanwhile, the rest of us juggle dual roles. We are both the client and the manager. The average person is already struggling with executive dysfunction, decision fatigue, and a 40-hour work week. So as much as they may want to radically change their life, they lack the resources needed to do so in a sustainable way. And it's no surprise that so many people feel incapable of changing their current life situations because they are already juggling so much, let alone thinking about their meaning for being alive. Adding that into the mix just seems counterproductive and honestly far too overwhelming to even conceptualize in the average person's situation. And I was thinking about this idea of buying back your time and how much of a role having ample time to just exist and flow and be in that state of jazzing affects your purpose. I am my most creative when I have free time, but that is becoming less frequent as I get older. And I didn't plan on bringing this up, but the Disney movie Inside Out 2, I don't know why I said it like that, but the movie Inside Out 2 has this quote where anxiety is being introduced and she's taken over headquarters, and Joy is feeling very sad and says, I think that's just what happens when you grow up. You feel less joy. And I have felt this feeling so many times over the last year of just stepping into a more consistent and full workload, 2 jobs, full-time school, trying to be present for myself and my relationships, give time to my hobbies, figuring out new hobbies that I may like, and trying to balance it all. And it can be very easy to just feel that, like, oh, I guess this is just what happens when you get older. You just don't have as much joy. But the little sentiment that's there, that's not explicitly said, is you don't lose the joy. You lose the time and maybe the acknowledgement of the joy. You lose as much time as you once had to give to those practices that bring you joy. And I hate to say it because I know sometimes it can be overwhelming to think about how am I going to add joy to my life, but it is up to you and no one else to be laser focused on finding the joy. And like Soul teaches us, joy is in the little things. There's this African proverb, and I think it's really funny because it's in the new Lion King movie, and I would play this song for my students every single day. Like, as soon as snack time rolled around, I was like, y'all want to hear the song? And they said, Lion King, Lion King. And I just love this song. But I figured out that a line from this song is a very powerful sentiment about how important it is to build community. It says, want to go fast, go alone. Want to go far, go together. And we're going to get to this idea of using your community as a vessel for finding your purpose a little bit later in this episode, but I think it's important when we are having a really hard time navigating what our personal reason for being alive is, find it in others. If you can't live for yourself, if you alone in your own existence isn't inspiring or doesn't give you this sense of purpose, think of others. Think of maybe what you can do for others or how your gifts can be used in service of the greater good. Rugged individualism is a relatively new phenomenon, and it directly contradicts centuries of humanity thriving on mutual aid and shared responsibilities. I mentioned this in the last episode, but systems of hunting and gathering were very foundational to human civilizations, and it was built on this understanding that I give you something, you give me something. This is a mutually beneficial exchange where we are both getting our needs met. We are helping our community. We aren't completely individualistic and only focused on what can I gain from this, but it is a equal give and take. A principle of reciprocity is the foundational practice of what it means to be alive, and we can't, nor were we meant to do this alone. And so embracing this culture of rugged and hyper-individualism is just hurting all of us. Instead of forcing ourselves into rigid self-sufficiency, we should be asking, how do we create a culture where support is standard, not stigmatized? She says, you're not failing. You're just functioning in a world that withholds support from the many and sells it as a luxury to the few. It is not your fault that you are constantly in the state of exhaustion, that you feel like you can barely catch your breath most days, that you're overwhelmed by anxiety and this laundry list of to-dos and have-tos. That is what we've been sold. It is not your fault. I just want you to know that. It is not your fault. But it is our responsibility to cling on to, even if it is the most tiniest amount of hope that we can possibly find. Which brings me perfectly into the idea of tragic optimism. Now, there is this brilliant video by the creator Deja Sade called Tragic Optimist's Guide to Surviving Capitalistic Nihilism, which sounds like a mouthful, but it's because it's a lot, and it's incredible. I recommend everybody to go watch it. Capitalistic nihilism is described as this creeping sense of disillusionment when you realize that your life, value, and sense of self has been reduced to transactions. This hollowness that materialist possessions can't fill. It is in equating one's worth and reason for being alive to their job or how much they are able to produce and put out in the world. This isn't just a feeling, it is a symptom of a system that prioritizes profit and productivity over human well-being. She references a lot of James Baldwin's work, which I really want to get into more so, but his critique of the American dream was this unpacking of what we've built up to believe we want and this ideal life, and realizing that that ideal blueprint of the American dream only serves a very select few, and a lot of us are struggling from systems of oppression that keep us sick, keep us out of reach of very important resources that would help us elevate our life circumstances. She says that capitalism thrives on the idea that anyone can make it if they just work hard enough. And this idea of push, just work yourself till you cannot work anymore. Work yourself tirelessly every single day, slave away at the same job for 40 plus years, and maybe then you'll be able to earn your way to benefits instead of just being given benefits because you are a human being and you deserve them and you need them. The idea of work-life balance is truly just a fallacy. We were never meant to sacrifice our own well-being and have to earn the right to exist under safe, sustainable conditions. I saw this video, which, yes, it was satirical, of just saying work-life balance doesn't exist. Why are you balancing work? Like, just live your life. But I think that is a really interesting thing to unpack, because why is it that we have to negotiate basic rights, that we have to request time off to live our lives, that we have to beg and earn the right to exist and have resources that sustain us? The idea of rugged individualism, as mentioned in the video, is the view that success is achieved by the individual without a need for community. The creator talks about how the erosion of empathy is directly tied to living under capitalism, and how a lot of people have adopted this perspective of, if it doesn't affect me, then I don't care. Because we are already dealing with so much in our personal lives of just trying to navigate all of our different roles, be present, and still show up in a way that makes us feel fulfilled, we have little room to acknowledge the struggles or the life situations of people outside of our direct community. Lack of purpose and life's meaning tends to lead to violence, either towards oneself or others, and a cultural attitude of resignation and hopelessness. This is directly connected to the idea from Soul of a lost soul. Sometimes when we are in the zone and we are hyper-focused on our life's purpose, almost to a fault, we can then be a lost soul. Or on the other side of that, if we are completely resigned and adopt this culture of apathy and completely numb to our circumstances, that also is a way in which capitalism can keep us from our purpose. She says how we are encouraged to chase, but rarely to find. The system is designed to keep us on this never-ending hamster wheel of, if I just get this, I'm going to get the prize. But every time we get close to that prize, they move the destination. They move the finish line. It feels like you're running on this treadmill, and any time that you're about to finish or get close to the finish line, they add more miles onto it. They increase your destination. And it's exhausting, and it begs the question, what are we working towards? What is the point of all of this? In The Artist's Struggle for Integrity, James Baldwin writes, You survived this, and in some terrible way, which I suppose no one can ever describe, you are compelled, you are corralled, you are bullwhipped into dealing with whatever it is that hurt you. And what is crucial here is that if I hurt you, that is not what's important. Everybody's hurt. What is important, what corrals you, what bullwhips you, what drives you, torments you, is that you must find some way of using this to connect you with everyone else alive. This is all you have to do it with. You must understand that your pain is trivial except insofar as you can use it to connect with other people's pain. And insofar as you can do that with your pain, you can be released from it. And then, hopefully it works the other way around too. Insofar as I can tell you what it is to suffer, perhaps I can help you suffer less. Our pain and making room for using your pain in a way that is purposeful for everybody is how you can step into your purpose. Viewing your pain as a portal to connection, your pain as a portal for transformation, instead of your pain as this limiting thing that gets in the way of you living your life, is incredibly transformative and radical. There is a sense of helplessness, hopelessness, disillusionment, resignation, and cultural apathy that comes with living under a system of capitalism. Living under a system that was never designed to sustain and support us. But instead of completely throwing those feelings away and viewing them as unproductive, you can take ownership of those feelings and say that my pain has a purpose. My suffering has a purpose. And James Baldwin talks a lot about that in his work of transmuting darkness into light, alchemizing the experiences of suffering, whether individual or collective, and using it to fuel a revolution for greater good. The tragic optimist perspective says that pain is inevitable, but misery is a choice. Embracing the impermanence and releasing control, acknowledging that nothing lasts forever, but that doesn't mean that you can't still savor the joy of the good moments now. I'm someone that struggles severely from anticipatory grief. I will be in a good moment and have this hyper awareness that this is fleeting and this moment is only going to exist in this vacuum of time, like I am never going to get this time back. But I try not to let that scare me. I really try not to let that scare me, and instead allow that to be an invitation to savor it and be present for it. And that's why I document everything, because I have this fear of forgetting things but also being forgotten, and I have this fear of not savoring the moments when I'm in them. Now, there's a quote from Perks of Being a Wallflower that perfectly describes this phenomenon of trying to save the good moments, because you know that just like the pain and suffering, none of these things last forever. We are always fluctuating between different states, and just as much as you can have a lot of good moments of joy, inevitably, as life happens, you are always going to be brought back to this moment of pain. The two have to balance each other out.
Hi, I'm editing this. I'm adding it in. Sorry if the quality is not as good, but I finally found the quote. It says, "Dear friend, I feel great. I really mean it. I have to remember this for the next time I'm having a terrible week. Have you ever done that? You feel really bad and then it goes away and you don't know why. I try to remind myself when I feel great like this that there will be another terrible week coming someday, so I should store up as many great details as I can. So during the next terrible week, I can remember those details and believe that I'll feel great again. It doesn't work a lot, but I think it's very important to try."
In this video about tragic optimism, the creator says that there are three main things that play into the tragic optimist perspective. It is mindfulness, resilience, and acceptance. It is acknowledging that nothing is lasting forever, both the joy and the negative, more heavy emotions. It is saying that I'm going to be present anyways, and it is showing up for life even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Existentialism has long existed, but Gen Z is now waking up to this perspective of existential dread and this overwhelming feeling of, what is my reason for being alive? How do I plan for a future that may never exist? Is it even worth me showing up to my job every day if the world is going to end? And just feeling like there is no point to being alive and participating in this system that is actively making us sick. Existentialism is the belief that existence is inherently meaningless, but we give it meaning. And I think that the language around existential dread online is very negative, but it fails to recognize the part where we are the ones that get to decide what is meaningful. Just like in the movie Soul, just like in Perks of Being a Wallflower, just like in Inside Out 2 even, you are the one that gets to decide what is meaningful in your life, and it is up to you to find the joy and find that feeling of being alive. Whatever it is that sparks joy for you naturally, whatever it is that gives you that unshakable, euphoric sensation of, oh my gosh, I'm alive and I'm experiencing that to its fullest extent, it is up to you to go and seek out. And I think about this all the time, but some of the most impactful and life-changing bodies of work and pieces of art that have made me feel that feeling of being alive have portrayed the little moments, the magic in the mundane in the most beautiful way. Movies like Little Women, Interstellar, The Pursuit of Happiness, Soul, Before Sunrise, all have very clear themes of enjoying the little things and using that as a way to connect to your purpose. A big foundational belief as well, represented in all of these bodies of work, is the fact that your purpose is not just an individual pursuit. It is not something that you alone discover and then share with the world. A lot of people find their purpose through connecting with their community, and the relationships we are able to build and the love that we are able to give and receive is how we can connect with our purpose. I truly think, and maybe this is just because I have the tragic optimist perspective, but I think that love should be and is at the center of everything we do. If we were to have a collective human purpose and reduce it down to one thing, or sum it up in one thing, I think it would be love. It would be awakening to the abundance of love that is in the universe and giving it to as many people as we possibly can. And even movies like Interstellar saying how love is the fifth dimension. Love is the one thing that transcends space and time. It is the one thing that we all cling on to, and for a lot of people, it is the one thing that keeps them alive. With navigating the tragic optimist perspective, it is 100% valid, normal, and human to have these feelings of existentialism or just feelings of disillusionment, wanting to resign, and feeling just numb to the world around you. There's a Substack, I mentioned it in a few podcast episodes ago, but it is brilliantly written. It is called Everyone is Numbing Out, and she writes, "So many of the things that once gave the average person's life real meaning are now treated with sarcasm and contempt. College is a waste of time. Money is a waste of your life. Getting married is just a piece of paper. Having kids is a nightmare. Family is a burden. Hobbies are merely quaint. Earnestly expressing yourself is cringe. Leaving the house is exhausting. Religion is for idiots." The list goes on. And it perfectly describes how all of the things that we were sold to want and the framework of the American dream is crumbling. It needs to be redefined, and the way that we can redefine that is by personally taking a look and surveying our own life, what brings us joy, making room for those things and those experiences, and getting rid of what doesn't, whether that is immediately uprooting your life and taking a big leap if you have the means to do so, or if it is strategically through finding ways to show up in your purpose, even if that means you still have to go to work and work a 9 to 5. Something that I've found to be really helpful in feeling like my life has meaning is making space for myself to sit in the feelings of dread and not letting myself get stuck there, but not immediately shooing those feelings away. I feel like radical acceptance is a huge part of what Deja talks about in her foundations of tragic optimism. It is acknowledging life as it comes, not life as we want it to be. It is saying that this is the hand that I've been dealt, and it is my job to find a way to do it, find a way to use it in the best way possible. Saying, I'll figure it out tomorrow, but today is for feeling. Using that pain or whatever feelings you're going through as a portal to deeper connection with oneself and your community, using your feelings of uncomfortability and not running from them, but leaning into them, because whatever makes us uncomfortable is just an invitation to get to know ourselves on a deeper level. Using community to find purpose. If you can't live for you, live for others. Something that I've never really considered, but with talking with my friends and just seeing more opinions about this online, is the idea that there are a lot of people in this world that don't feel like they were put on this earth for a specific purpose. I had this conversation with my friends a few months ago about how I just feel so overwhelmed all the time of like, how am I going to change the world? Like, I feel like it is my responsibility to change the world. And they were just like, that's interesting, like I don't feel that. And it's not to say that one is better than the other, but it is interesting to unpack and kind of carve out how to live your life for people who want to fulfill this huge purpose, and for those of us who feel a little bit lost and don't know what to do. What about the people who don't feel called to do anything or make a massive change in the world? What are they supposed to do with their purpose if they don't feel like they have one? Finding a sense of purpose in your community and grounding yourself in this understanding that it is way bigger than you. I say this all the time, and today I'm going to be using it in a more optimistic way, but we live on a floating rock. Let me hold your hand when I say this. We live on a floating rock. Your struggles, your pain, your life experience, whatever anxieties you're having, feelings of depression, feeling lost, disillusionment, but also your joy and your happiness and your excitement are not just your own. And expressing that, sharing that with people, saying, I see you, I hear you, you're not alone, connecting with people on that foundation of what it means to be human and experience this life can be used as a vessel for you to fulfill your purpose. And James Baldwin has a quote that I can't remember, but he basically says that you read a book and you think that your emotions and your life experiences are your own, and then you go read a book, or you look at a painting, or you watch a movie, and you realize that generations of people have had these exact same feelings that you are currently going through, which perfectly just represents that collective organizing and collective sharing of resources, pain, joy is what we were put on earth for. We were not meant to do this all alone, and the fact that our lives mirror each other is proof of that. The 16 personalities that I talked about in the beginning of this episode, I think is really interesting when talking about purpose, because for so many of us, we think that our purpose is just this one-size-fits-all thing, and that we have to fit into this box of, this is what I was put on earth to do. It can't change. It is unwavering. I must do this thing for my whole life, and that is the only reason why I'm alive. And thinking that we all share the same purpose is very unproductive. 16 personalities breaks it down into a bunch of different categories, and this is just one example of how you can kind of start to expand your definition of what your purpose is. But on this website, it says that there are analysts, diplomats, centennials, and explorers. I don't know if I said that right. Sentinels? I don't know. But there are different categories of personality archetypes, and even with that, it breaks down like specific jobs that you might be good at and skills that you may have. And with those different personality types, it even breaks them down even further. I think there's like 4 specific types of analysts, diplomats, explorers, etc. And my specific type is ENFJ, which I think it says that I'm an yikes, not antagonist. Hello, Boz. My specific personality type is an ENFJ, and I believe that is a protagonist. It says in the first line of the description that I am someone that looks for the larger meaning. I am someone that feels like I was put on this earth for a specific purpose. But that is just one personality type out of a whole bunch of them. And mind you, our framework and understanding of purpose is completely man-made. Yes, there are ancient concepts of purpose and meanings of life, but the way that we look at it right now of defining you by this label and you having ownership of that label for your whole life, never changing, never investigating it, never reevaluating it, is completely wrong. And it's not really grounded on any proof. It is just what we have taken on as a way to cope with our seemingly meaningless existence on this earth. The Substack called Find Purpose and Community Outside of Your Job and Play a Role in the Revolution by Aisha Khan beautifully built on this idea of looking beyond yourself to find purpose. It is not just about you, and it is more so about, like the quote I mentioned in the beginning, what you can do with your gifts in service of others. She says, what would it mean for a therapist to truly provide life-sustaining support to people crushed by capitalism and colonialism? What would it take of us? What does real medicine look like in a world where people are left to starve on the street? What is the role of medicine under capitalism, which deprives people of the right to live? And she starts off this article by giving an anecdote, or by giving a personal story of her experience seeing this homeless woman who is very obviously ill. She has on very worn down clothing. She is sitting on this park bench outside of the hospital where hundreds of caregivers, people who were told and believe that their purpose in life is healing, but they're ignoring this person who is obviously in desperate need of healing. And it asks us, what is our purpose outside of these roles? If you're just saying you're a doctor but not doing anything to actually heal people and meet them where they're at and design care specific to their needs, you're just someone who is pretending and posing as a doctor. If you're a teacher and you don't actually take the time to meet your students' needs, to understand their specific situation outside of the classroom as well, and cater their learning experience to that, show up for them in the ways that they need you, not the way that the book tells you to do, you're not a teacher, you're someone that plays the role of being a teacher. Your purpose is so far removed from your role, and it is so much bigger than the role or title or job that you hold. If you are just using your job title to hide behind and as a cover-up for fulfilling a purpose, that's not your purpose. She says that if you have a job that is about helping people or making change or doing good, then I assure you, sticking solely to the responsibilities outlined in your job description will not allow you to truly help people. And this is reflecting on how these systems of capitalism perpetuate these cycles of abuse and keep people out of reach of resources. And even in pursuing humanitarian work, there are still limitations and specific rules that capitalism has in place to keep your care and the amount of help that you give to others limited. If there is a person in need in front of you, someone sick, unhoused, marginalized, vulnerable, oppressed, and your job doesn't allow you to step up and help them by any means necessary, then that job really was not designed to care for people, save lives, or change the world. To truly be a healer, scientist, care provider, you need to be a community organizer. You need to think about what it would mean to care for people in a manner that directly tackles the root causes of disease, not just the downstream symptoms. Sticking to the system and coloring within the lines leaves us enablers and perpetrators of violence without a counterbalance to offset that harm. Only focusing on your job and career is exactly how you serve the empire. And this further built on the idea that I mentioned earlier of viewing your job as just a job and using the skills learned there to further serve your purpose. Stepping outside of whatever role or title you hold and stepping into what the feeling is and how you can use those specific skills to serve your community. Your purpose in life is not to be a musician. It is to inspire people through your artwork. Your purpose is always going to be bigger than whatever job title you hold. Decentering ourselves, focusing on the world around us with all its pain, suffering, messy joy, and asking ourselves, how can we collaborate towards building a better world is the very thing that will give us true meaning, purpose, and hope. Purpose is found in the mundane things. It is about admiring the little joys, savoring those moments, and not trying to rush to this finish line of a grand, overwhelmingly ambitious purpose. I've stressed that quite a lot in this video. I'm sure that you understand that message, but there are other ways of finding one's meaning in life, and I think that this is a constant process that you have to reevaluate and ask yourself, what brings me joy? What do I enjoy doing that comes naturally? Maybe what is something that I did as a kid that I can reincorporate in my life now that made me feel happy to be alive. 22 from the movie Soul beautifully embodies what it means to be in awe of existence and finding magic in the mundane. And like I mentioned earlier, some of the most profound and just moving bodies of work that I've consumed and that made me feel happy to be alive have documented the mundanity of life in such a beautiful way that just connected me with my humanity. Movies like Perks of Being a Wallflower that show the ups and downs, ebbs and flows of navigating mental illness, and the way that the author writes, or I guess in the book it would be Charlie writing, like his personal essays, the way that he is so laser focused on the little details, whether that is him admiring his crush, Sam, and saying that he doesn't want to view her as just this ideal person in his mind, but he likes her for who she really is, and him finding so much joy in just talking to his friends. There's a quote where it's like, we didn't really say much, but we were just there for each other, and that was enough. Or him describing like driving, listening to their favorite song, and saying how that made him feel infinite. Something so small and mundane is just so beautiful. Or in the movie Little Women, the documentation of just what it means to be a woman and coming of age and sisterhood, and how that is also messy, but it is also beautiful, and the two can exist at the same time. All of those things, for me personally, and I know this is probably a shared experience, are just such a beautiful reminder that yes, existing is messy. Yes, existence is going to bring pain and hard challenges and some traumas that you feel like you can never move through or heal from, but there is always going to be a time when you do. There is always going to be a time where the joy comes in again. And that is why it is so important to be as loud and expressive about the joy when it comes, because you know that it is temporary. Not to say that it'll never circle back, but on the other side of joy, there is a yin to that yang. There's going to be pain. That is an inevitable part of being alive. But that doesn't mean that you have to shoo away the joy just because you know that it's fleeting. I invite you to come alive, to take the leap of faith and find out what really sets your soul on fire. Like Joe in the movie Soul, the thing that he learns and the big meaning to this movie is the fact that one's purpose is not in the grand things. One's purpose is in acknowledging the little things that make you feel this overwhelming sense of what it means to be alive. That is enough. Some people's purpose may be in the job that they have. Some people may find a grand sense of purpose in that, and that is okay because that is their journey. But I think something that our culture doesn't really acknowledge is those of us who feel like our purpose is in the more mundane, simple joys of life. At the end of the movie, once Joe has gone through this journey of helping 22 find her purpose and come to Earth to experience what it means to be alive, he's asked, once he's given a second chance, to go on his journey as well. He's asked, so what do you think you'll do? He says, I'm not sure, but I know I'm going to live every moment of it. And that just gave me chills again. But we are so focused on rushing through life to try to find our purpose, filling these labels and roles and this blueprint that was given to us by people who didn't care about our well-being of what it means to walk in your purpose. Finding purpose in your job, not in just who you are, not your being, but what you're doing with that being. Finding purpose is so much more about the why than the what. It is, what is your reason for being alive? What makes you feel joyous? What lights your soul on fire? What naturally makes you feel just in awe of existing? And so much of finding a purpose I found in my day-to-day life is about making room for presence and acknowledging the beauty that already exists. And like I mentioned, there is kind of a more reflective, strategic framework to finding purpose. It comes from the article Life Crafting as a Way to Find Purpose and Meaning in Life. And it's interesting because it is from a medical website. It is from psychologists and healthcare practitioners. who came together and surveyed from an academic standpoint how people have found meaning in their life, which I think is a good reminder that your purpose is as important to your health as having a good, balanced nutritional routine and a workout routine. All of those things factor into our overall well-being, and it's not to be taken lightly. Research suggested that meaning in life necessarily involves people feeling that their lives matter, coherence, making sense of their lives, purpose, and determining a broader purpose for their lives, significance. In this article, the writers and researchers stress the importance of creating personalized goals and bridging the gap between who you are now and the future version of you that you hope to one day get to who you are now and the version of you that has already accomplished those goals. There's a stark perspective described in this article of hedonistic thinking, which is very self-centered, very what can I do to serve me? How can I build a life that only benefits me, versus eudaimonic, I hope I said that right, eudaimonic, which is community-focused sense of purpose. And at the end of the article, it describes like this strategy for life crafting and building a sense of purpose. My AVID teacher would have loved the hell out of this article because it describes the process of finding one's life meaning in a very strategic and like note-taking perspective. And I think a big part of finding purpose is leaning into curiosity, not thinking that your purpose has to be this rigid, unwavering thing, but allowing it to be more fluid. Instead of viewing your purpose as a rock, this very rigid, unmoving, serious, and solid thing that stays the same throughout the course of your entire life, instead, view it as an ocean tide, something that is more fluid. Sometimes it's intense, sometimes it's calm and quiet, but it is always felt. It is always flowing, even if you don't directly feel it or it's not as powerful as it once was. The way in which you embody your purpose changes throughout your life, but the purpose and the basis of why you're here is the same. And like I mentioned earlier, I think that all of us are here to awaken to this collective understanding of love and give that in whatever form we can, whether that's through helping people, healing people, gathering people, organizing, teaching, whatever it is, whatever vessel you use to embody your purpose, that is meaningful. Back to the article. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked. The articles describe that elements of life crafting intervention involve values and passion, current and desired competencies and habits, present and future social life, possible future career path, which I like that they wrote possible because it's saying that it can change. It's leaving room for the unthinkable, for you to be surprised. Ideal versus less ideal future, goal attainment and if-then plans, and public commitment to goals. I love that they added that a key part of your purpose is having the audacity and the courage to admit what you're working towards to other people. So many of us are afraid to say our goals out loud because we're afraid that by admitting it, we are then going to be held to the standard of accomplishing it. And there's a fear of, what if I don't fulfill this thing? What if my idea changes? But I've always been someone who can't shut up about things that excite me, and that means that I'm inevitably going to say something and probably not follow through with it because I'm ever changing and my wants and desires are always changing with me. But I think that allowing yourself to say those things out loud, even if that means that you're going to prove yourself wrong and contradict yourself one day, it is okay. That is just part of being human. Me saying I'm going to be a nurse my entire life, telling people at age 17 that I'm going to move to Hawaii and meet the love of my life and do all those things, and me being almost 21 years old now and not having accomplished the things that I set out to do, but still being on the path to walking in my purpose, is okay. Just because I didn't do the things that I rigidly designed for myself doesn't mean that I'm not still living a life of meaning. There's a song by Daniel Caesar called Superposition that emphasizes this idea that life is a contradiction. Life is all about yin and yang and flowing through life without this laser focus on what it is you're moving to, but following that flow, trusting that it is leading you exactly where you're meant to go. And I want to end us off on a really beautiful quote that really speaks to me in terms of purpose. If something burns your soul with purpose and desire, it is your duty to be reduced to ashes by it. Any other form of existence will be yet another dull book in the library of life. If you have this unshakable, indescribable calling to do something with your life, something that terrifies you but you can't seem to let it go, something that always is heavy on your mind and is just pulling you in this direction, it is your life's purpose and mission to follow that. And I'm not saying that your purpose is in doing one thing, but it is in doing that thing that you're going to reveal elements of yourself and meaning. For example, my purpose is to help and heal people. I know that. But one of my biggest life dreams is to give a TED Talk. And I realize that I'm not going to get to that version of me that gives a TED Talk if I don't practice public speaking and navigating the insecurities and shame and embarrassment that comes with putting myself out there now. Yes, the end goal for me and the big accomplishment that I want to give is giving a TED Talk, because I think it would be such a privilege to be able to inspire people on such a big platform like that. But if I was just sitting around waiting for the TED Talk host to come knocking at my door with an opportunity, I would be waiting in vain. That is not going to happen if I don't now take the steps to close that gap between that version of me that has it and the version of me now that wants it. Your purpose can be this grand thing that shakes you and wakes you up every day and just will not go away. And even in the back of your mind, as far as you try to push it back there, will always resurface to the front. But your purpose can also be the meaning that you find in the mundane. It can be the relationships that you build, the love that you nurture with those closest to you, and the love that you give out into this world. It is such a limiting belief that our purpose is tied to what we do and specifically what title we have in this world. But like Joe says in Soul, it is about living every minute of it. It is about savoring those simple joys. So I ask you, what sets your soul on fire? What makes you feel the overwhelming sense of being alive? Follow that, because that will teach you so much about yourself and connect you with every other human being on this world. And I encourage you to, when you do find that thing, share it loudly, share it unabashedly, share it even when it feels embarrassing, because I can guarantee that there is at least one other person on this earth that is waiting for permission to exist fully. I love you so much. Thank you so much. Whether you are new to this podcast, whether you're just finding me or you've been a long-term listener for the 2 years that this has existed, for helping me step into my purpose, for giving me permission to show up imperfectly, show up messy, to stumble over my words, but to still show up, because that is what matters. I love you so much. Forehead kiss time. I love you. I hope you have an amazing day, night, evening, morning, and I hope that this episode meets you well. I love you so much. I will see you very soon. Thank you for digging deep.